yarnivores and spiderettes. We're in the kitchen today because I am going to try to dye some yarn. Now, I have done this before, but I am still an absolute novice. I will be the first to admit it. So this is going to be an adventure for all of us. Yes. So today, like I said, I'm going to be dyeing some yarn. And what I'm going to do is I have this yarn right here. I had gotten a whole bunch of hanks of this yarn from Kramer's, and it's undyed. So we're going to do the doing. Now, it came in hank form, but what I did, I'm all set to go. I just have to add water. I balled up 2 of those hanks, and not too tightly though, because you do want the dye to penetrate somewhat. So I balled up 2 of these hanks of yarn, and we are going to experiment. Yep. Now, what I figure is, since the yarn is all balled up, when you put it into a dye bath, yes, the dye will soak in, but not all the way to the center because of surface area and so forth. So, that being said, what I'm planning on doing, that's the operative word, planning on doing, is to dye these 2 balls of yarn in one color, then reball it so that the outside is on the inside and vice versa, and then re-dye it in a complementary color. And I have a lot of colors to choose from. I went shopping. So let's show the colors, shall we? Okay, so these are all the colors that I have. Now I decided to go for broke and get a box of the Wilton's icing colors because I figure, you know what? Instead of buying all of those colors individually, I just decided to buy a box set. Now the box set, I did have a coupon. It was, let me see, I think it was a 25% coupon maybe. So the box, it cost me about $12.79 for all those. Now those are 0.5 ounce jars, whereas the larger ones that I got are a full ounce, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. So these are a full ounce. Now these on, with the coupon, these were $1.92. And so I figured, yeah, I'll just go for broke. So we have ourselves lemon. By the way, I was shopping at Michael's. Not sponsored. We've got lemon yellow, pink, violet, teal, royal blue, burgundy. Let's see, red, no taste. Okay. Golden yellow, copper, black, brown, and Kelly green. Now, I decided that I would also try these other colors. Now, the black, I figure I'm going to be using a bunch of that perhaps, so I bought a second one. The juniper green and the moss green, they spoke to me. And the creamy peach, I got that one specifically because I was thinking of using this with perhaps the burgundy or the violet or maybe even the copper. I'm not sure yet. Now, as far as these 2, I was thinking of using together perhaps the juniper green and the moss green. I was thinking about using these 2 at some point on a different project. But for today, I'm thinking the creamy peach, and I'm not sure yet, but we'll get to that. At any rate, also another thing that you will need, of course, is white vinegar, because you need an acid when it comes to dyeing. Now, of course, also the yarn, it must be wool. It must be a natural fiber, otherwise the dye it won't set. So it needs to be a natural fiber, whether it is wool or cotton. That's very, very important. But also you need an acid so that the color will actually stay in the yarn. Okay, very, very important. And so I'm going to be using white vinegar. If you're using Kool-Aid, preferably sugar-free Kool-Aid, if you're using Kool-Aid, you really don't need the vinegar because it has citric acid already in it. So that being said, let us get our first dye bath ready. All right. All right, so I mixed up my color, And right now I'm just heating up my water. Now, this is a fairly large pot because I wanted to get both balls into the pot and also be able to have them get covered by the dye bath. And so what I did was I mixed up, it was half a teaspoon of that food gel coloring in about half a cup of water, just, regular, room temperature water, and mixed it all up, and it looks so pretty already. And it's going to be approximately this color right here, okay? And yeah, the reason why I only filled up my pot halfway full is because when I put the balls in, obviously the water is going to rise, and I don't want it to overflow. So after this gets heated up, we're going to bring it to a simmer, not quite a boil, but more of a simmer. And then I'm going to add the dye bath, and I'm going to add some vinegar. I'm thinking a quarter of a cup to a half a cup of vinegar, and then we're going to put the yarn in. I'm excited. Are you excited? I'm excited. Okay. Okay, we got some bubbles going on. Now, if it starts to get a little too crazy, I can lower the heat, but let's get our dye bath started. Moment of truth. Okay. Now, the dye itself is still a little bit clumpy. You know what? Didn't entirely mix. Did not quite entirely dissolve. It probably would have helped if I had used hotter water when mixing. But you know what? That is okay. That's part of the learning process, right? So now, going to, whoa, hello, do a splash of vinegar. And I figure I'll start with a quarter of a cup, and I might add more later. And let's do between the two. There we go. All right. Add our vinegar. Now, for those of you that are experienced dyers, you're probably screaming at me right now, like, what is he doing? Like I said, I'm not experienced, so that's okay. All right, so now let us break out the big guns and stir this up nice. Make sure that the dye is all evenly distributed. And now, of course, the initial dye that I had mixed, it was in half a cup of water. Well, yeah, I just added it to a whole bunch of water. So the initial little bit that you saw in the paper towel, that's of course going to be darker than what the yarn is going to be naturally. So I'm nervous about this, but what can you do? All right, let's pop these suckers in here. And hopefully they will not overflow. Now I'm going to try to push them down. Now the reason why they are floating is because I did not pre-soak the yarn. It's looking gorgeous already. You know what? Let me just sort of see if I can scoot that all the way underneath. And my water level is too low. I was afraid it was going to be too high. So, you know what? I'm going to add just a little bit more water. That is okay. Better to have not enough water than too much, because God forbid it overflows on you. Because that would be a veritable nightmare. We are almost there. Maybe one more. Okay, one more. Again, you're probably screaming at me. That's okay. Oh yeah, see, perfect. Completely covered. It's exactly what we want. Awesome. All right, so now, I'm going to raise the heat just a little bit, get some bubbly going on here. A little bubble action. And sort of scoot these around. And if we lift them up, ooh, that is gorgeous. It's not so much of a peach, it's more of like a salmon, really. But that is quite pretty. I'm loving it so far. Now, of course, the closer that it gets to the center of the ball, the lighter the yarn is going to be. Now, what I'm thinking is, let this sit simmering for a while and see if we can get some of the dye out of the water and into the yarn, really get it in there. And then we will see what we get. We'll see what we see. Now, when the water starts to get clear, then you know that the dye is being exhausted. We are a long way from the water being clear. So let's wait and see what happens. Okay. All right, folks, so I had it in here for about 10 minutes, and as you can see, there's still a lot of dye left in our dye bath. So I added some more vinegar, and I'm going to leave it in here for another, I'm thinking 10 minutes to see, if we can reduce some of the color a little bit more. So let's give it a whirl. Okay, so 10 minutes later, and how's the water doing? Still has quite a bit of dye in it. So I'm thinking about doing something that I've heard of that is referred to as a dye mop. And that is using more yarn to extract some of the excess dye in your dye bath. So I think I'm going to give that a try. Let's see what happens. All right, so what I did was I took an extra one of those hanks and I pre-soaked it for a little bit, wrung out some of the extra water, and now I'm going to dip it into my dye bath to try to get some of that extra color out of the yarn and maybe, just maybe, produce an ombre effect. I don't know yet. Again, we are playing around with ideas here and trying not to make a mess while we do it. But I figure that if I can get some of the extra dye out of the dye bath, it might help us out. I mean, it's looking really pretty already, and a lot more subtle than the balls that we have soaking already. Oh, that's a nice transition right there. Trying to sort of feather the color going up so that it's not too much of a line in the yarn. And I'm thinking this is looking really, really quite pretty. And it looks like most of the dye is getting sucked up, which is good. I mean, there's still some left, but I think that this might have done the appropriate trick. So, let me put this over here and scoot this over here. Like so. There we go. And I'm going to rinse this out, and yeah, we're going to go from there. All right, so I took my yarn mop and I rinsed it out with a little bit of dish soap and made sure that none of the dye was coming out of it. And no, none of it was coming out. And this is what came out of it. Ah, this is so pretty. This is gorgeousness. Absolutely lovely. So it'll have a cycle of sort of an ombre effect with this peach color. It is so pretty. Now, yeah, there is still some dye in the dye bath. So what I'm going to do is, since it's already been cooking, simmering for quite a while, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn off the heat, let it cool down to room temperature, and hopefully the remainder of the dye will do its thing, okay? And then gonna have to wait for it to completely cool before balling it up to try the second process. So I'll see you in a bit. Hello again. So I let my yarn, continue to cool down in the pot. I just took the heat off, and this is what the water looks like after the fact. Now, I took the balls out of the water and I squeezed as much water out of them as I could. And when I was doing that, the water actually was coming out clear. I did that into the sink, but this is how much of the color was left in the yarn. And let me just scoot this on over here. This is the yarn that came out of it. Now, yeah, it looks really, really bright on the outside, but let's take a deeper, closer look at what we have on the inside. Let's start balling this up and see what there is to see. All right, so I got about halfway through, and this is what I have been balling up. I'm so happy with the results. It's absolutely gorgeous so far. It's more of a tonal yarn than an ombre yarn or a variegated. It's more of a tonal kind of deal. I love how this is coming out. Now, what I have left is this guy right here. Now, yes, it looks really splotchy because of the way that I wound the yarn and the areas that were exposed more so than others. So I'm going to keep winding. I've got about halfway more to go with this one, and then I'm going to do this one as well, and then we're going to get started on the second dye bath. Alrighty. All right, folks, so it is finally time for the second dye bath. Now, after balling these up, I was really quite surprised how much of the peach was still visible, which is really cool and it's really interesting because I was afraid that it wouldn't get as far as I was hoping, but it did. So first things first, I mixed up, again, it was half of a teaspoon of the dye, this time burgundy, and let me just lower this before it starts to go crazy. There we go. Lower that. So it's half a teaspoon of the burgundy food dye in half a cup of water. I'm going to try to duplicate the same process, so hopefully it will even itself out, so to speak. So let's throw this in here. Ooh. Ooh. So pretty. And a lot of the dye is still in the cup, but that's okay. That is okay. Now, paper towel would be awesome, wouldn't it? Hang on. I'm coming. Be right with you. I don't want this experiment in dyeing resulting in my dying, so I can't make a mess. All right, so now I'm going to add. Last time I added, it was between a quarter of a cup and a half a cup. I think I will do the same thing for starters this time. There we go. And we will go from there. And pour you on in. And there's still quite a bit of dye. Let me see if I can sort of swoosh that out. Yeah, that works. Gotta be careful, don't want to burn myself. A little bit more. Okay, that will do. And now, submerge these bad boys. Now, because they are already wet, they won't be quite so buoyant. So hopefully, I'm not going to overflow the pot. No, success! Haha! And it was the right amount of water. Perfect. And look at that gorgeous color so far. That is, because the water, I mean, the water looks like brown, but that is so pretty. Now, I thought that the burgundy and the peach would complement each other well, and I think, I don't know, but I think that I hit upon a good mark. So, you know what we're going to do. Now we're going to wait. Yes, it's about as much fun as watching water boil. So I'm going to let this sit for approximately 10 minutes and we will check back in. And then I also have another hank because I was thinking of using that as an additional dye mop like the last batch. So I'll see you in a bit. All right, so after much, much less time, surprisingly enough, uh, it's done. The last batch, yeah, it took, closer to, I would say, half an hour. And, you can see that the water is practically without dye whatsoever. It's quite remarkable. Most of it's soaked up. It's very nice. I'm not sure how far it penetrated because it went in so quickly. Now, like I said, I did do a dye mop as well, so I'm going to show you that. Okay. Okay, so as the burgundy was dyeing, I could see that it was absorbing the dye very, very fast. Perhaps because I added more of the vinegar in between shots. That could have been it. I'm not entirely sure, but hey, we're going to find out what we find out. So because the dye was absorbing pretty quick, I decided, let me get in my dye mop in a hurry. And this is the result. Not quite as appealing as the last one, I will be the first to say. Now, it's hard to see, but it does actually have a light purple, sort of almost mauve tinge to it. However, on camera, it does not do it justice. In person, it does look better. On camera, it just looks dirty. It looks like a dirty mop. I'll be the first to admit. So I'm not entirely sure. I might over dye this. Nothing saying I can't. But, I mean, it's it's an ombre. It's just, based on what you see, it's not a very attractive ombre. Also, the lighting in here isn't fabulous either, but hey. So, we shall see what we shall see. So, like I said, this is a learning process for me as well. So, that being said, I took the yarn off of the heat. I'm going to let it completely cool, and then I'm going to unball those two balls and wrap them around Nitty Knotties. It's a framework that you wrap yarn around to create hanks like these, and we will see what we will see. All right, I will see you shortly. Hello again. All right, so after my yarn cooled from the stove, I then, as I said I was going to do, I then wrapped it around a nitty knotty, and it looked something like this. It's a wooden framework and you wrap the yarn around it, and then I tied it off, and then I washed it to make sure that there was no excess dye that was going to come out of it. There really wasn't much at all, but used a little bit of dish soap and rinsed it out nice, and I hung it out to dry for a while, and this is the final result. It's some bright stuff, isn't it? But it's gorgeous. I really love how this came out. Now, straight off of the nitty knotty, this is what it looks like. And then giving it some twist, you get yourself a nice little skein. Now, am I happy with the results? Yes. Are there things that I would have changed? Yes. But like I said, this is a learning experience that I have never tried, doing this dyeing technique before. So that being said, like I said, there are some things that I would do a little bit differently next time. All right, so upon review of what I had done and what I would do differently, okay, as much as I love this yarn, I think that to sort of tone down the orange and tone up the burgundy, what I would do if I were to do this same colorway batch next time, of course it would not be the same. You really can't duplicate results entirely when it comes to dyeing, hence the term dye lot. What I think I would do is next time to start with the burgundy, give it more time, less vinegar, more time, okay, so that the burgundy could soak in more so. And then when it came to the peach color, I would put in perhaps less of the peach dye and have it be a little less vibrant. Personal preference, totally. But am I happy? Yes. Would I do this technique again? Yes. Is it very, very easy? Relatively mess-free? Yes. In fact, I didn't use gloves the entire time, and I never had any issue with staining. Total bonus right there. That being said, now the other yarn that I had, which was dipped for the purposes of a dye mop, that yarn, when I balled it up, see, in this lighting, you can really see how it is a really gorgeous mauve color. It's very subtle, but it's there. Compared to when I held it up when it was wet, it was very hard to distinguish that really pretty color. In fact, I really, really like how this turned out. Then the peach, so pretty! And I've been knitting with it a little bit, experimenting. I think I might rip this out actually to make it a bit more narrow. This is what I've been making. Yes, a little knitted scarf. I think I might make it a little bit more narrow so that the scarf itself can be longer, because I only have this much for a full scarf. So I'm thinking that's what I might do. Now, to achieve this, which I absolutely love because it makes me think of watercolors with a nice sort of slow, stripy transition, I really, really like the effect. What I did was I did 2 rows of one color, so back, forth, and then 2 rows of the other color, back, forth. It's the garter stitch. It's very, very simple. It's very, very easy to do. And I did feature this technique in a previous video, which was, I believe, the Noro stripe scarf. It's a very, very easy technique to sort of blend 2 yarns together, and I think it's gorgeous. I'm just afraid that I won't have enough yardage for a scarf quite as long as I would like, so I think I'm going to rip this out, frog it. I know it pains me to frog any stitching, but if the result is a product that I'm happier with down the road, then it's worth it. You live, you learn. So I really like how that turned out. Now, what I will do is I will put links in the description box down below for my other dyeing and spinning experience. Now, this yarn Now, I didn't spin this. This I'd gotten out of a Kramer's mystery box, as well as this yarn here. But I really, really like how this turned out. Now, as an extra bonus, if you had watched my previous video, it was a Happy Mail slash giveaway video that I had done. This yarn I'm going to be giving away. Yes, in about a week's time, I'm going to announce the winner of my giveaway. So these two skeins, I'm gonna twist this one up, but yes, these two hanks of yarn will be in my giveaway, and I'm gonna put a link to that in the description box down below so you can enter for your chance to win this yarn. Yes, it's completely 100% unique. You can't duplicate this. You can try, but you won't get this exact same colorway. So there goes my air. It is hot here today. What can I say? So that being said, you have your chance of winning an original Fiber Spider dyed yarn. Is it fabulous? It's a matter of opinion. Personally, I like my colors to be a little bit more muted, but yeah, to each their own. So that being said, this was a really fun little adventure in dyeing yarn. Would I like to try to do some different dyeing techniques? Definitely. If you have any suggestions, please let me know in the comments section what you think. What would you like for me to do? What do you want to see as far as dyeing techniques? There's space dyeing, there's hand painting, there's all sorts of things that I could try, and I'm totally open to suggestions. Yep. Also dyeing with other things like Kool-Aid, RIT dye, the acid dyes that are in a powder form. I'm disinclined to use those because those are not food safe. I might use those at some point in the future, but for now I'd like to stick to food safe dyes. That way I don't have to get pots and pans and all sorts of things that would be specifically for dyeing. So, that being said, thank you for joining me on this little dyeing journey, and until next time, you know what to do. I want you to all stay inspired, stay caffeinated, stay stitching, and please stay safe. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I will see you in my next video. Bye for now, everybody, and have a good day.